You're listening to the coaching series on the Aligned and Magnetic podcast, where we're bringing our good and bad experiences with the professional coaching industry to the table to talk about them. Our mission is to really create more awareness for both coaches and consumers of coaching so that they can make better decisions and also have better coaching relationships and see better results. We are so glad to have you here. Now let's dive in. Welcome to the Aligned and Magnetic podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Ashley. I'm an ICF certified business alignment coach, and they call me the money mindset and manifestation queen. I'm here to help you make your vision for your life and business a reality and doing it in a way that lights you the fuck up. If you're ready to build an aligned, magnetic, and profitable business so that you can live the life of your dreams, you are definitely in the right place. In this podcast, I promise to provide you with the raw lessons, the tools, and powerful questions to help you on the way to creating success your way. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's dive in. Hi, loves. Welcome back to the Aligned and Magnetic podcast. We are back for another episode of our coaching series with Ashley, and today we have another special guest joining us, Pam Griffiths, who happens to be my mama. Pam is the CEO of Pam Griffiths Coaching Inc. and is a certified executive coach and a professional certified coach with the International Coach Federation. Almost a master certified coach, right? Yeah, we're in the process of doing that. She's also a best-selling author of Leadership Unleashed and Awaken Your Extraordinary Leadership. And she's the founder of the Coach Approach Leadership Academy, an ICF-accredited coach training program that Ashley and myself have gone through and are actually now teaching. Pam's coaching system focuses on learning how to lead self first and coaching skills practice. Her coaching methodology equips leaders with the essential tools to be more effective and succeed in today's fast-paced world of constant change. Welcome to our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. And thank you for inviting me to this conversation.
Of course.
And first, I just want to say I'm so excited about what you're getting up to with your Aligned and Magnetic podcast and inspiring women around the globe. I'm going to say women. How about individuals around the globe?
Yes.
With your message and your voice, and yeah, so very inspiring.
Thank you. Well, it's great to have your voice added to the podcast as well. So to get us started, because we've got a really big conversation to be had today and to share with you, but I kind of want to get in on like a fun level. So the first question that I want to throw out to all of us is, what is your favorite thing about being a coach?
Great question. I think at the end of the day, for me, it's just being an observer of the growth that we get to see with our clients. That just, to me, there's nothing better than that.
I love that. What about you, Ashley?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, it's like seeing those aha moments for our clients, especially because, right, like we've talked about like how the coaching conversation works, and like having them do the heavy lifting and just kind of like helping them through that, like guiding them. They do all the work. So when they actually kind of come full circle and it's like, oh my gosh, like I can see how I've been like blocking myself, or I've been holding on to this belief that's like holding me back or whatever. Like it's just so rich.
I have to agree with that, because I was reflecting on this question because, I came up with the questions and I was like, what is my favorite thing about coaching? And it's exactly that. Like it's such a different feeling than, I think human beings, we're so quick to offer our suggestions and our advice and our recommendations for other people and what we think is the answer right for them. But when we ask them the questions, and it's such a process to get there sometimes, sometimes the answer to a question doesn't come in just one coaching session. And so to see that answer come through across a journey with your client and to see that answer actually really be life-changing for them is, I think, the most impactful thing. And it's honestly the thing that keeps me coaching. So I was just editing last week's episode, and I mentioned in that episode, Pam, that, when you were going through Royal Roads University training, that you tested your coaching skills on us. And I know you've been in the industry for many years. And so I'm wondering if you could take us back to that moment, back when you were studying, back when, you were in this position of leadership in your corporate role, and you're learning about this new industry that you thought you kind of knew about, but, it really just like ripped the blinders off, I think is the terminology that you use. Can you walk us through what you were experiencing in those moments, learning about this new incredible tool to empower leaders?
Great question, Lauren. And I love that you're taking me back there because it's a good reminder of where I came from, which was I was just an intuitive coach. I had just developed my own methodology for coaching of what I thought was coaching. And I was good at it for a period of time. I was really quite good at it and successful. But then I'd hit a wall, and I remember thinking, oh, maybe coaching's not for me. Maybe I need to do something else. Maybe, where do I go from here? I just had hit a wall, and I was completely blind to what I needed. And so I had a conversation. A good friend of mine connected me to Marge Bussey, who is faculty at Royal Roads University, where I attended the graduate level executive coaching program. And she and I had a chat before I had applied. And I knew then after our conversation that I needed to attend or apply, at least in hopes to attend the certified executive coaching program. What I found out was I went in the room with brilliant minds, got in a room in a cohort with these brilliant minds, people who I'd never thought I would be like rubbing arms with. And I thought I knew coaching because I'd been coaching for years. And I had, as I said, I'd had a lot of success. So I got in there with this idea that I knew what coaching was. And what I found out was, oh my gosh, I was not coaching. I was telling. And the transformation for me was huge to know that. I think, and this seems to be a bit of a theme with our clients, they feel like they've got to do all the work, and they feel like they need to be the reason for the success of others. And I was carrying this weight of feeling like I needed to be the reason or part of why they were successful. And what I found out was, no, I just needed to be the holder of space, not just, but I needed to learn how to coach. Like literally, I needed to learn a methodology, a tried and true methodology that was founded in, science. It was incredible to see the difference between what I was doing and what I was taught. And what happened as a result was, we're guides to people's transformation. We just need to learn how to ask really good questions. And I'm totally simplifying what it is that we do. But at the end of the day, our clients do all the work. And so when I completed that program, and I was still in the corporate world at the time, and I brought that learning back into the corporate world with the leaders that I was working with, they were like, oh my goodness, they had never experienced that kind of leadership development, coaching, ever. And some of them had been with the organization 13 years, and they said, never in 13 years have I ever experienced such incredible work. And so I share that with you because it's not, it's not just a little thing. It was, the transformation was huge.
Yeah, I love that. And so I heard you say, you were a coach, you were in this coaching role with corporate, right? Coaching with air quotes, your leaders. What were you taught as a coach back then?
Yeah. So I don't know that. I mean, I think over the years I had learned like little courses here and there on coaching. And I always knew there was a beginning, middle, and an end to a coaching conversation. I always knew that. What are we talking about? What's the thing that's keeping us stuck or whatever? And then what are we going to go do? And so I think that was sort of the framework for what I knew. And what I learned was I had repeat business, meaning people kept coming back to me with the same problem over and over again, which then I knew at a deeper level that, something that I was doing wasn't working. There was something that I was missing. I felt that anyway. But I still second guessed my ability to, do I even want to continue this? And it felt so shallow at that point where we just weren't, bottom line, we just weren't going deep enough. And so, so that was the I'll call it thin framework. And there is still a lot of people teaching, coaching, obviously out there, that is just like a beginning, middle, and end. You do this, and you do that. And that's fine. And it works, but it only takes you so far is how I'll share that from my perspective.
Yeah. Ashley, I wonder if you have anything to add, because I know, the Coach Approach Academy is pretty much my only experience learning methodologies. I've experienced a lot of coaching that really was not the way that we coach as true coaches. And that's felt really crappy. But I'm wondering from a methodology perspective, Ashley, I know you mentioned a bit last week, but what can you add in terms of, like, I guess what I'm trying to extrapolate here, because we go so deep in the Coach Approach Academy, right? And we help our students to really learn what the word coming to mind for me is the embodiment of coaching. And it sounds to me like the methodologies that are taught elsewhere are really just these surface level, what do you want? Here's the action to go get it kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. I'll jump in here. Like my mind's kind of been going crazy as Pam's talking. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. But when you think about that analogy of the iceberg, what we do a good job of, I think, through the program that Pam's created is like going deep and getting underneath the surface. Whereas another coaching methodology that I've partaken in actually says not to, that it's not our business to go underneath. And I've had lots of questions myself about like, well, how does this actually help get people anywhere? So Lauren and I last week were talking about the method from Brooke Castillo. So the idea that your thoughts create your feelings create your actions, and your actions create your results. So this iceberg methodology, right? So if you think about just staying on the surface, what they're wanting to do is just target that action. Like, what's that behavioral change that needs to happen? And how can we get you to make that as fast as we can? And then if we can get you to change the behavior, well, then your result's going to be different. But there's so much more, I think, that's being missed by not going back to, well, hey, like, what are the feelings about this action or behavior that are creating you to act that way? And then taking that even further back, like, what is the thought? And so I think as we get into that iceberg, we're able to kind of, well, like, what is the feeling here? And okay, if this is the feeling, then obviously that's created from your thought. So what thought do you have about that? So I've seen certain methodologies. I think that's where you would maybe get like repeat clients, because you can only get so far. So if I'm going to change my behavior because I need to have this type of a result, okay, so I go to the behavior and I change it. That's only going to last so long. I feel like that's not like it's not deep rooted enough. Again, depending on what it is. But if you're talking about someone who's wanting to lose weight, how many times do people, oh, I'm just going to start exercising more, and they increase like the amount that they're exercising, and maybe they lose a little bit of weight, but they gain it all back because, well, what are the feelings you're having about like losing the weight? And then what are the thoughts that are charging those feelings? So I think that there's, potentially a disservice in some of the coach, like what you said, Pam, it'll get you somewhere, but it's not going to get you, it's not going to take you too far. You're just kind of going to run up and keep coming back and circling back to the same problem.
Yeah. And I loved also what you said, if I can tag on, Ashley, to what you just said around the feeling and Lauren talking about embodiment of coaching. And where we want to get to is that what does the client want to experience? How do they want to feel about a situation or whatever it is that they're doing? How are they feeling? And then how do they want to feel? And when they're feeling this feeling that doesn't feel good for them, what's that about? And how can they recreate a feeling of bliss or, more happiness and more feeling more inspired, whether it's about their work or about their weight, or we want to go deep to really connect that emotion and to really help them feel the experience of where they want to get to. And that's like connecting, to me, it's the connecting the heart and connecting the brain to the goals that we want to create for ourselves and the vision that we have for ourselves, to really experience and dive into that. How do I want to feel when this happens, or when I take this step, or when I achieve my goal?
And I think that too is part of like the lead self first, right? Like, Pam, I know that you do that in your practice, and I know that I certainly do that in my coaching. It's like you need to change yourself from the inside out in order to then have more of an effect on a team. So it comes from the inside. And like when we're talking about this as well, while we may be helping I think when we can get under the iceberg too, we're not just like, okay, like let's say we have, I don't know, an exec leader who has a team and they want to have some sort of a performance. I think that when you get under the iceberg, it's not only going to help them in that one facet of their life. Like this is literally like life-changing in regard to other different areas of their life as well. And I think that that's like the beauty when you can just like, kind of get deeper and tease out these things. Like you're making profound changes that are going to have ripple effects that are far more reaching than just doing like, let's just stay on the surface and just attend to this one thing and like just change the action. Let's just focus on changing the action. So anyways, that's what's just coming up for me through this conversation.
I love that. And something, I'm not sure if you touched on this because I popped out for a second, but for me in my practice with mindset, right, in the subconscious mind, like what is so key is really getting to those beliefs and behaviors, well, the beliefs that create the behavior that have been programmed within us, since we came into this world, since even before we came into this world, arguably, because, we spent 9 months in gestation. Is that what it's called? And whenever I'm like out and about, because I love to travel, I always love to put myself in other people's shoes and just observe like how incredible it is that all of us human beings are living on this earth with completely different experiences, completely different ideas of what it means to exist, completely different ideas of any topic that you want to bring to the table just because of what we've been exposed to. So what I love about coaching, true coaching, is that we're taught how to get to that beneath the surface level like you're talking about and really understand like, okay, what neural pathways led us here and what new pathways do we need to form in order to get there?
Yeah, I love that, Lauren. And that's the cool part, right? That when we learn a brain-based model of coaching, we can literally change the way we think about things. We can override, when we create these new pathways, we can override the old stories, the old behaviors, the old mindset. We know it's still there because it doesn't really go away. Maybe like somebody who's quit smoking, maybe it's always sort of in the back of their mind and it's there, but they can override, once they've overcome it, they can override that thinking or that thought that might trigger them to go and pick up a cigarette. So the same thing here is we're creating the new pathways by the way that we coach, by engaging the prefrontal cortex, because, I'm on a mission to stop shrinking thinking. I did that for a good part of my life. And because I was taught, how to tell. I was taught how to tell. Our teachers told us how to do things. Our parents, it's so far reaching. And by the way, we never stop learning and growing, but I'm here to stop shrinking thinking. We have so much untapped capability on this planet. And we are here to awaken people to themselves and to what they already know to be true about themselves, and stop the shrinking thinking and really expand the hearts and minds of people around the globe.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, like the shrinking thinking, for those who are not familiar with coaching, is like whenever you're being told something, it actually does not engage the prefrontal cortex. It actually stops a lot of your brain connections, right? And they've done research on this. They've observed this in neuroscience, where like when you ask curious questions and you're actually engaging the other person versus just suggesting or telling, that actually you make new connections, and it engages a different part of the brain that actually helps you in really big ways, not just to solve your problems, but to open up creativity and curiosity, and to then start asking yourself questions. I find a lot of my clients, actually, they start to hear my voice in their head after a couple months of working together, and they're like, I always ask myself, what would Lauren ask at this time? And that's the beauty, I think, of coaching, is that once you start asking those questions, it kind of doesn't stop. Unless you become very out of practice, then, we have to go back a little bit to square one. But
I just want to add, Lauren, when you're talking about, we're engaging the prefrontal cortex and our neurons are firing, we're getting our clients to do the work. And that's where the magic happens, when the clients are doing the work. Because just like you're saying, when we tell, our brain disengages. We actually, our brain just goes into it offloads.
It's like if you're watching TV, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm just checked out. I'm completely checked out. So you might be telling me something, but I'm not connecting in my brain at all. Unless I'm lit up about a story you might be sharing. But if somebody's trying to tell me how to do something and not engaging my brain, it's like, the brain's offloading. And so that's like the research. That's part of the research around why coaching works. A certain type of coaching, that is, not all coaching. So that's really like some clear distinctions for us and what I know and what we know about a true coaching methodology that really does change the way our engaging the brain and the way our brain thinks and works.
Mm-hmm. And just to tack on that, I know you mentioned before you had like a revolving door of clients, telling people how to do things and shutting off their brain is an exact method if you want to get to that, which I don't recommend. It's not ethical, but to get to that revolving door of clients is, tell your person what to do, and I'm sure they'll come back to you because their brain's not engaged. They're not actually picking up what you're putting down. So yeah, very, very important. Now, this is kind of all leading up to this big question that I really want to have more opinions on, because I feel like I've been trying to kind of bring up this conversation of the importance of being certified in the coaching industry. For those who are not aware, the coaching industry is not regulated. So you can go out there, start your Instagram, LinkedIn, website, and be like, hey, I'm a coach. And you can charge people for it, and there's no repercussions. But over the years, as the coaching industry has grown, the number of certified and uncertified coaches have grown immensely. We've started to see in the coaching industry a lot of clients walking away with very dissatisfactory experiences. And so I want to bring this conversation to the table with other professional coaches around this idea of certification, and like, why is it important to get certified as a coach, to be a coach?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So what I love about, I guess here's my story. My story was I thought I was coaching and I actually wasn't. And so now that I know what I know, it's so obvious to me where the gaps were. So the fact that an ICF accredited program, that is aligned to the ICF core competencies and ethics and standards, keep the professional coaches, their business and the way they work with clients at a standard that is that underscores the profession of coaching. And if you don't know what you don't know, it's not your fault, because you're working with the tools that you have. I was completely blind to the way I was coaching. And so, not my fault. I only knew what I knew. So I would say, definitely do your homework and understand, get to know the differences between a coach who's been trained through an ICF accredited program. Do they have the learning? A minimum is 60 hours for a coach to have coach training in order to apply for a credential. There's many other hoops that coaches need to jump through in order to obtain an ICF credential. And it's not a given, by the way. You don't go through training and mentor coaching and get your 100 hours and then off you go, you're accredited. You could pass or fail or have to redo your exam. So I just want to say that out loud. It isn't anybody's fault, but as consumers of looking for a coach, I would definitely say go and do your homework to find out, when you're looking for a coach, what are their credentials? Sometimes we go to people to just know what they know. We want to pick their brain, and that's okay too. But it's getting super clear on what you want, because if it's coaching and you want somebody to engage your brain so that you can think differently and create new pathways and shift some of your beliefs and the way you do things, that's different than maybe consulting or mentoring or somebody who's not trained in a methodology that is accredited through the ICF.
Yeah, I was just gonna, this is such a heated topic, and I can hear people jumping on this being like, no, of course it shouldn't be, you shouldn't have to be ICF accredited just to be a coach and go through this and all that stuff. And I can understand where they're coming from, but I think from a professional, ethical, value standpoint of having, these guidelines in place. So you both know that I've partaken in some other coaching methodologies, and they do not follow the ICF guidelines. And it's so plain and day. I'm so grateful to have had this experience, even though it's also it's a lot of undoing for me, right? Because they are the one that are like, oh, we don't need to go under the iceberg. And I'm like, oh, okay. But, it's almost becoming easier for me now to point out and say, oh, this isn't in alignment with the ICF, and what does that do for the client, right? So I'm thinking about it from the client's perspective. What am I missing out on? I'm missing out on, a more formal structure. I'm missing out on, being protected as a client, right? Because when you're part of the ICF, that also protects the client. If someone wants to say, oh, I'm not, I'm feeling that Ashley breached ethical guidelines. Well, if I'm not part of something and certified through a governing body, then, they're SOL. That's your problem. So it protects you too as the client. Now, I'm saying this too because I recognize and I know some coaches out there who aren't credentialed, who haven't even taken any coaching courses, like literally nothing. Maybe they've listened to a coaching podcast. And I could say that on one aspect, I can see that they can be a good coach, but I think that kind of goes back to what Pam was alluding to before with her. I didn't know what I didn't know. I could see where her clients might get stuck. They're going to be repeat clients. She's not necessarily going to be able to take them far enough because it's so much more than just the beginning, the middle, and the end. That's an important piece of coaching, but there's so much more. So I'll stop there if anybody else wants to jump in, because I see everyone's nodding along. I think this is a big discussion.
It's huge. It's huge. And I love what you shared, Ashley. What came up for me as you're articulating this and Lauren, what you said, would you hire an accountant who didn't have accounting background? How about a lawyer?
That's a great question.
What about a doctor? We all go to these professionals because we trust that they have the knowledge, the background, the expertise. So this is a profession. And that's the piece. It's everybody's calling themselves a coach, but do we really know the impact of true coaching.
Imagine investing like hundreds of thousands of dollars into your home with some like neighbor handyman who's never actually learned the trade, right? That's just like money down the drain. I've had experiences where I've been coached by, I have so many thoughts right now. So I've been coached when it comes to business coaching by coaches who have gone through coach training, but they've been those like weekend things, I guess, because I mean, I can tell they're not coaching. And the biggest thing for me, I think, and the most frustrating thing for me as a paying client, and, you know, I want to put this out there that I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think there's just a big misunderstanding / a lack of education around the coaching industry. And it's confusing because the word coaching originally started out as like, I'm coaching for sports, right? So it's a little weird. So I get it. And also I think we can do better, because when clients are paying for coaching and all they're getting really is, oh, you should try this strategy, or, okay, this isn't working, focus on this, right? Or telling somebody, I've been told before that I'm not being disciplined enough, or that, I don't know, that I need to schedule my time differently. And these things are actually kind of like damaging to hear as a client, right? And while the feedback, also around air quotes, because it wasn't really asked for to give feedback, but while the feedback or advice was maybe accurate, the way that it sits with someone or is received by somebody is so different when taking a coach approach versus just like offering that feedback. And what I can say from my experience is when I'm in a coaching session with somebody who truly gets coaching, my brain works differently. My emotions come forth so much more easily, which allows me to process a lot more quickly. And the results for me are long lasting. There are things like I can remember working on things with my ICF certified coach, and the things that I've worked on with my coaches who have not gone through ICF training, I'm like, I don't even know what we worked on, you know? So the experience of being in a session with an ICF certified coach is so much different. And what I want to throw out to people who don't know anything about coaching is an ICF certified coach is going to either have an ACC, that's the first level, it's an associate certified coach, that's the certification I have and the one that Ashley's working toward. PCC, professional certified coach, which is the second level, and MCC, which is master certified coach, which is what Pam is working toward now with, like, how many hours do you have? Over 1,000 or something crazy?
Over 2,500.
Right. So there is a lot of experience and reflection and skill development that goes into maintaining or upkeeping your credential, which I think is so key, because I find a lot of people in the industry do their work and they're like, oh, I'm an expert now. Like, I can go sell this, you know? And the reality is, and what coaches believe in and what we teach is that the journey doesn't end. There's always going to be periods of reflection. There's always going to be growth, right? At every single level. Like, there's no destination. You don't actually get there. It's a whole journey. So I just wanted to share that. Calling all coaches, leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers. If you are resonating with this episode so far, you're curious about what it takes to really become a coach and what coach training skills can do for you and your career, listen up. Whether you're looking to do more fulfilling work as a certified coach or learn skills that will help your clients or team members see greater results, or you're curious to learn more about coaching and if it's a fit for you, we are here to help. Book a complimentary 30-minute discovery call with Lauren or Ashley to experience coaching firsthand and get all of your questions answered. See the link in the show notes to book your call today.
Lauren, one thing that came up for me when you were talking about your experience of working with a coach who wasn't necessarily credentialed through the ICF versus working with someone, and like the ICF should just, I don't know, like contract me or something. But you're what was loud and clear was like this co-creating, right? Like you're really partnering with a coach versus like, you know, not having that. And that's like one of the core competencies that the International Coaching Federation has. And that's a huge piece, right? Like how does your coach, or how do we as coaches partner with our client to co-create a relationship, to create this partnership, you know? And there's a bunch of different facets under it, but that, like when you were saying that, I'm like, yeah, this reminds me of like what it looks like to co-create a relationship.
You know, and something I need to throw in, sorry, I'm just jumping in over you, Pam, but it was something that came up for me and I feel like it's important to share. And it's that I think a really big part of this puzzle, which is flawed, is that the client doesn't realize how impactful coaching is. And it's hard to sell coaching from a marketing perspective. And I don't want to say that as a limitation, but it can be challenging to sell because there are people who are out there that don't have the coaching skills, but they're very good at marketing. And they say, well, you're going to come to me and you're going to walk away with exactly this. And while in coaching we can say that, I feel like there's also a lot of room for exploration. And sometimes our clients' journeys change. It's a lot more of trusting in the journey and in that you are getting exactly what you need and what you want, right? But I think one of the big flaws is that clients who are seeking coaches think that they actually just want answers. And so people market to that and people deliver that. When in reality, what we know to be true is that, well, when you're not just being told answers and when you're co-creating, like you said, Ashley, together, that's actually what creates that lasting change. And that's actually what's going to bring you that transformation that you're looking for, not just like short-term results, but long-term change. I'm going to put my mic down.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. And when we think about selling coaching, it's really we're, if you will, selling a transformation because it is about the experience. And it's when we're having an experience with a client, we're wanting them to experience who we are as coaches. And then through that process, it's like, oh, so this is what coaching is. And then I want to go back to what you were saying, Lauren, about the journey of coaching, that we never do arrive. And that's also part of the core competencies in coaching, which is embodying a coaching mindset. And so part of our responsibility as coaches is to have a reflective practice and have an ongoing learning journey. And so we also believe that our clients are responsible for their own choices. The challenge is if we're busy telling people what they should do, then who owns the responsibility? And so when we can engage that brain again, going back to that, and our clients are saying, no, this is what I want to do because that's what's in their heart, in their mind, in their body to make that choice. It's up to them. And so then we get greater traction because they're the ones raising their hand to say, this is what I want to do, or this is the action I want to take because that's what feels right for me. We don't live inside each other's bodies or brains. So how could we ever assume we know? Because we're all so uniquely made.
Totally. And I think that conditioning of, asking for that answer and looking for the answers from other people does stem from, school. Like we're indoctrinated, I guess, or like told, from the moment that we step foot in school, what to believe and what to learn and what to do and do this and don't do that and all of this stuff. So it makes sense that as adults, we're looking for more people to tell us what to do and how to do things. But like we've been saying, like what really is going to make the difference is getting back to that curiosity and asking questions, like I think we talk about this in the academy where We stop asking questions because we're put into school. We stop asking questions because we're told to shut up and to stop talking and to stop being obnoxious. But asking those questions is actually so empowering, to ourselves. And I think that's actually what the world needs, is more people asking questions rather than just taking information at face value.
Mm-hmm. Being curious, I think I want to underscore that in what you're saying. And wow, when you think about like coaching is sort of a ripple effect throughout my life and throughout, a lot of our clients that come through, our grads that come through the Coach Approach Academy, it just becomes part of who they are, just how they engage with their family. Like, when I started practicing coaching and my children said, stop asking questions, because I just had to try it on for size, and so they weren't used to me asking questions, but that it's become just part of my being. At least I try to ensure that it's part of my being. And, our philosophy is that our clients are capable and whole, and they hold the answers within. All we need to do is just draw them out.
Totally.
Like, oh my gosh, obviously I can go off on a tangent on this whole educational institutional piece. So as someone coming from, and I'm not going to go there, but as someone who is a proud PhD dropout, I will say that this space, what I love about coaching is it helps you, it unfolds it organically, right? And it kind of goes back to that co-creating the relationship, is that you can true coaching, you show up to a call and there's no agenda. You set the agenda when you're there. Yes, maybe you guys have contracted that over the 6 months you're going to work together, you're going to work towards this. But I've never shown up to a coaching call and been like, oh yeah, I'm showing up with Susie Q here. We're going to talk about this, this, and this. Like, that never happens. That's not what true coaching is. But you can see, when, and I don't love using true coaching versus not, but when you have a coach who's not necessarily doing true coaching, there is an agenda. When you talk to people, oh, I'm going to meet with my coach. Yeah, she's got this agenda for us. We're talking about, and I'm like, oh, interesting. How's that working for you? What, and I sometimes get my back up when I see people, and I think I mentioned this in the last episode too, if someone says, oh, I'm a coaching mentor or something, I'm like, okay, I feel like that gives me a little bit more space to be like, okay, so you do coaching and mentorship. But when someone says, yeah, I'm a coach, and they're just mentoring or just advising or just consulting, and they've got this predetermined agenda, I'm like, that's not what true coaching is. So when you are true coaching, it's this beautiful, organic conversation that you don't know where it's going to go. You don't really know what it's going to turn into, but that's also the beauty of it. And I think that is kind of taken for granted, because in a society where we need to know, we need to have the answers, we have to see where this is going. What's the point of us meeting today? Where is this going to take us? You can trust in that, there's a process, right? We've been talking about the process, but let it just unfold organically. And I think that's so beautiful.
It totally is. And I just want to add one bit to that, because what you're talking about here is the not knowing, and that requires a lot of training for a coach to feel comfortable not knowing, showing up to each and every session, not knowing what's going to unfold. And that's the beauty that you get to now, Lauren and Ashley, because you've got the methodology, and it's easier now I'm going to say easier, because I don't know that it's ever easy, but it's easier to be able to show up fully and say, okay, let's this is about learning and growth. What's going to show up today? And that just speaks to your confidence in knowing coaching.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I want to draw something, actually, because I feel like what people think coaching is, and what maybe people who are coaching who are not certified do, is coaching looks like this. You have point A down here. You're like, okay, this is where I'm at, and this is where I want to be. And the coach helps them get there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And what true coaching is this is where I am. that little dot, and let's make it bigger. This is where I want to be, right? We have the start and the finish. And the journey to getting there is actually kind of like more like something like this. And it takes
Truth.
Yeah. And, not knowing, like, this is it's something that people in our society cannot wrap their heads around. The amount of control that we feel like we need to have because, I don't know, for whatever reason, I guess it's just where we're at right now with humanity, but the amount of control we feel like we need to have over our lives, our friends' lives, our partners' lives, our kids' lives, our clients' lives, it's just mind-blowing to me. And this is why you can't truly take an overnight coach training program or a DIY self-guided coach training program, because you need to learn, like we're talking about, these foundational skills that you honestly will not be able to learn on your own or in 2 days.
Not a straight path. A great visual.
Thanks.
The messiness of coaching conversations, and yet at the same time the incredible results, transformation that comes from that process. Yeah.
Right.
This kind of brings it back to what we were like just talking about earlier, like the brain-based part of coaching, that not knowing piece. So when people don't know, well, what areas of your brain are activated, you kind of get into fear and anxiety and panic. So your amygdala, hypothalamus, those are all activated. When those are activated, you can't access that higher thinking, that prefrontal cortex, that thing that's going to help you to kind of think of, different pathways to come to a solution, like that creativity, right? So coaching kind of helps us to like quiet down those spaces so that you can access that. But in today's day and age, it's, we're constantly bombarded depending on, I don't personally consume mainstream media, but, I've heard horror stories, and like you can see like what's happening right now with people, just being consumed and living in this fear and not being able then to think through like, let's quiet the brain down, like take a few deep breaths, let's recenter, let's ground ourselves. Okay. How can we move forward? It's everybody just acts out of sheer panic, and, we're easier to be told what to do and act on it as opposed to, listening to our inner self.
I love that. And being bombarded, Ashley, with all the information that's saying, this is the thinking. This is how you need to think. This is it. Yeah. It makes sense to me why people, their brains are offloading and saying, okay, that's how I need to operate, instead of stepping back and saying, hang on a second, what do I think about this? Yeah. And hence why we're here to really help engage more brains and really, increase the awareness on the planet.
Totally. And this goes back to like, the internal self and like leading self first. Like, let's step into that space. I think like that's part of my mission, is to help more people like step back into themselves, like, forget kind of what's going on out there, but like, let's come back to self. And then through doing that, and like, that's exactly what your academy is, working with leaders who, well, I want my team to perform. Okay, well, slow down. Like, let's work on us, and then let's go outward.
You're listening to the coaching series on the Aligned and Magnetic podcast. This was such a great conversation today, and we totally went over our time limit. So I actually cut this episode in half to make it a little bit easier to listen to. And you will find part 2 of this episode next Wednesday. Remember to book your complimentary discovery call so that you can experience coaching firsthand. The links to book into my calendar or Ashley's calendar are in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today. If you like what you heard, I would love it if you left a review. If you like my vibe, come and hang with me in my Facebook or Telegram group. I'll drop the link to my email list below where you can get instant access. Make sure you check the show notes for any other links that I mentioned today. And until next time, I'm sending you waves of abundance.